Hello, finance experts. This is LeBlanc. Today we're going to be speaking about backtesting investment strategies. What we're going to be trying to figure out today is whether or not turnover ratios in mutual funds lead to higher expense ratios, or if they also lead to higher 1 year to 3 year returns. Now, backtesting is simply just a predictive model based on historical data which can be used to test the significance of financial strategies. The data that we're going to be using today is provided by TD Ameritrade, and it is composed of core and primary investments, which are meant to represent a well-diversified portfolio. As you can see, it's made of many different types of mutual funds: long-term, short-term bonds, foreign large markets, small cap, mid-cap, pretty much every type of mutual fund. Now, what we're testing to see significance of today is turnover ratios and its effect on expense ratios and returns. So what is turnover ratio? Essentially, a mutual fund turnover typically measures the replacement of holdings in a mutual fund and is commonly presented to investors as a percentage over a 1 year period. So, for an example, if a fund has 100% turnover, the fund replaces all of its holding over a 12-month period. Now, with that being said, intuitively you would think that that would lead to higher transaction costs, therefore leading to a higher expense ratio passed on to the investor. And the way that we're going to test the significance of this theory is through regression modeling. Regression analysis is simply a statistical process for estimating relationships among variables. In this first regression model, the two variables would be 1 year returns and their relation to turnover ratio. So you can see as turnover ratio goes up, there's not a great relationship between the two, which is why the dots on the graph are so scattered. Usually when there's a positive relationship, you'll have a positive slope on the graph. And the most important stat that you're looking to interpret on this regression model is R squared and adjusted R squared. R squared is called the correlation coefficient, and it tells you how correlated the two variables are among each other. An adjusted R squared is the same measure, except it adjusts for sampling error. And the way that you interpret R squared is blank percent, and in this case 1.43% of the variation in Y is explained by the regression model. So with this regression model, 1.43% of the variation in 1 year returns is explained by the regression model, which is modeling turnover ratio's relationship with that return. For 3 year, a little bit better, 17.59% of the variation in 3 year returns is explained by the regression model. Both of these are fairly insignificant, almost no significance to the relationship between turnover ratio and 1 to 3 year returns. And finally, the thing that we were mainly trying to test was whether or not higher turnovers led to higher expense ratios. Almost no correlation is found between the two. 0.034% of the variation in expense ratio is explained by the regression model. So as you can see, a higher turnover ratio does not lead to any type of added expense passed on to the investor, and there is no correlation between the two variables.